Hi, welcome back to C++ Bootcamp. So today our topics are loops and arrays in C++. So loops are used for the repetition of some code for various number of times or a certain condition is met. So in computer programming, for that purpose, we use the concept of loops. For example, let's say we want to show a message 100 times, then instead of writing the print statement 100 times, we can use a loop. Okay? So there are three types of loops in C++ programming. One is for loop, while loop, and do while loop. These are some of the uses of why we should use for loop, while loop, and do while loop. In for loop, what happens? That we have, sometimes we do not use it for the condition purpose, but we used for the number of times that code has to be repeated. For example, if I want to print some output for 10 times, I will use for loop. Then there is a situation, if I want to perform addition until I reach sum is equals to 10, then I will use while loop. Whatever happens, whatever iterations it may require, 10 iteration, 15 iteration, whatever it is, we will use the concept of while loop. So the condition will be until the sum is reached 10. Now what is do while loop? Do while loop is a kind of while loop, but there is some extra concept to it. That extra concept is about menu driven programs. In some programs, we may, our loop iteration depends upon the condition of the user. We want user to enter whether they want to continue further or not. So for that purpose, we use do while loop. So within do while loop, what happens that we execute the menu one time at least. No matter the condition is true or false, that code will be executed for one time at least. Now this is the syntax for loop, while loop, and do while loop. We will look into detail when we reach to the implementation section of these concepts. So this is the syntax for loop. Initialization of iterable variable, condition, how many times you want to repeat. So it depends. For example, if you want to repeat 10 times the loop, so you will say I is equals to 0 and I is less than and equals to 9. Then update is the increment or decrement kind of thing, I plus plus or I minus minus. We will look into it. While condition, just like we used to put conditions in if else, we use conditions here as well. Whenever the condition is true, the body of loop will be executed. Whenever the condition is false, the loop will be stopped. After that, we have the concept and syntax for do while loop. In do while loop, the body of loop will be executed at least one time until the condition is checked. Now let's move towards the code blocks and have a look at implementation. Okay, so we are in code blocks. Now let's just start the basic programming. That is iostream using namespace std int main. Now the first concept, that is for loop. Let's say if I have a for loop and the syntax is I is equals to 0, I is less than and equals to 9, and I plus plus. Now what is the body of loop? I want to print cout hello world. Okay, so there is some syntax error. Okay. Whenever you use this syntax, you have to use this integer I. Because the compiler didn't know, we already discussed it. For any variable you use in a programming, you must declare it first. So you can do this, or you can do, there is another approach that we can use, that is this. Okay, so both approach, but both are different in ways. So you can see the hello world has been printed for a number of times. I guess we cannot count it, so let's put end del there. So end line to transfer the output into next line. So you can see hello world program 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 number of times we have printed hello world. So this was the basic use of for loop. You can perform different tasks with it. And also there is a difference between these variables. So this end I, if I use this declaration method, this I is visible to whole program. So if I print C out I here, you will see the value of I, which is, I don't know what it is, because we have initialized that. I guess it was the raw value. Yep. So remove this from here. Then let's see. Then you can see its value is 10. Okay. So what happened there? That when you use declaration within the loop, so that is not visible to the program. Now this I is not visible to the program. So if I just comment this, it will generate an error. Yes. Because this doesn't know. The loop will run, but the outside the loop, this doesn't know that what is I. So this is the concept. Whenever you declare a variable outside the loop, this outside the for syntax, it will be visible to the program. But when you declare an iterable variable like this within for loop syntax, it will not be visible to the rest of the program outside the loop. It will be visible within the loop, but not outside the loop. So this is a really useful concept. Now let's move towards the while loop. Now, as we have discussed about for loop, the simple syntax and working of it, now let's talk about while loop. We said that while loop is used when we have code which depend upon a certain condition. Now let's demonstrate that concept with a simple program here. So I'll say that number of iteration. So number of iteration, I'll just count the number of iteration, Number of iteration is equals to 0. Okay, so there is no iteration then. Okay, then I'll say integer sum is equals to 0. I want to calculate a sum. But there is addition. I'll say addition variable. So add variable. I'll say just add variable. Okay, we will initialize by 0. Now it has been initialized. So it's a good practice to initialize it by 0. So to avoid any raw data from the memory. Now what I will say to the program, that while executes until the sum is less than or equals to 10. Okay. So this loop, this body of loop will keep continue iterating until I reach greater than sum greater than 10. Okay. So now let's demonstrate it. I will say that iteration plus plus. For every iteration, just count the number of iterations. And the sum should be equals to sum plus add variable. Now, what is add variable? So for the first time, it will be just 0. So now we will say add variable plus plus. It will be incremented by 1. After that, what we will do is see out. We will say iteration is equals to iteration. Okay. Then see out sum is equals to sum. Then see out. Oh, we don't need add variable. Okay. So we want to see sum and we want to see iteration. Now let's run the code. So we have got the code here and it says that it took 6 iterations to reach our required result. So I told you the loop depends upon the condition. Now let's say the value of add variable will be incremented by 2 equals to. Okay, now it is right. Okay, so iteration is equals to 4 and sum is equals to 12. So you saw that it depended upon the condition met. Okay, so this condition was reached under what circumstances? That was that add variable was incremented by 1, so it reached in 6 iteration. But when I increment it by 2, it reaches 4 iteration. Maybe 3, it will be a different story. So it depends upon the condition when it is reached. Okay, so this code was repeated for until this condition was met. Okay, then when this condition becomes false, when sum is greater than 10, the loop execution will be stopped. Okay, now let's have a look at the do while concept. Okay, so we have demonstrated the concepts of for loop and while loop. Now it's time to demonstrate the concept of do while loop. Let's have a look. So I'll say here that character chr is equals to nothing. There is nothing in it. Okay, so next thing is going to be let's just demonstrate it. So I will say do this line of code. Sorry, here enter. So I'll say hello world. Okay, hello world, and then I'll say cout, enter the way, press E to escape of loop. Okay, so if we use E, if we pressed E button, then we will be exited from the loop. Okay, and we will put indel here. Next thing is cin chr. Okay, this is chr. Now the do while condition will be while the chr is not equals to E, the loop will keep execute. Now let's run this code. Okay, so I did the same mistake again. Okay, cout. Now what's the problem? There should be, oh, okay, so this is the syntax. I am so sorry. This was the little mistake. So if I enter G, it will print hello world. If I enter J, it will print hello world. But if I enter E, it will exit. So did you got the concept? So what was the error? I'm sorry, I didn't show you. As we discussed in the syntax of do while loop, this is the syntax. Okay, you saw that after the condition, while condition, we will put a semicolon. So I just forgot this and there was an error we encountered. So I hope you got the general idea of loops, how they work, and in which situation we will use these loops. So we will perform some practice problem in the later on part 2 of this day 2, where we will demonstrate some little bit advanced concepts and you will learn a lot about them. So now let's move towards our next concept, that is array. So what are arrays? Arrays are a collection of elements of the same data type stored in contiguous memory locations. What happens? Let me give you an example. For example, you have 100 students in your department, okay? And you want to assign some value or initialize every student by value. So what will you do? Will you write hundreds variables, or will you prefer writing something that will hold those 100 values? So this is where the concept of array arises. where we can store same data type, multiple variables. So this is the generalized syntax: data type, array name, and array size. Okay. So there is a concept of index. What is index? Every element in array is assigned its own index. But we can say in a way that every index is assigned a unique value, or maybe same value, but here how it works. That index 0, we stored 0, index 1, we stored 1, index 2, we stored 2. So this shows that index starts from 0, and also if we say that the array is of size 10, so we have to iterate over the 9, not 10, because if you iterate to 10, it will mean that you are just saying that the array is of size 11. Now, there is another concept that is called characters. What is character? We have already seen character A, B, C, D, alphabets. We store alphabets in it. So if we use the array of characters, it is called string. In C++ language, there are two types of strings. One is that string. That concept is used in C language as well. That is called C strings. And another concept is string object. But we will discuss the string object when we learn about objects and classes in OOP programming. But now, for now, you just learn about C strings. Now, C string are arrays of type character terminated with null character. Every string of character is terminated with a null character. So when we study object, then we will discuss string. Now let's move towards the code blocks to discuss these concepts while implementing. So welcome back to the code blocks screen, and now let's just implement our arrays concept. So first of all, let's talk about integer array. I'll say int, this is the data type, and array name and its size. Let's say I have the size of 4, size of 4. So there are two ways. I can write this as like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, size of 5, size of 4, and I have initialize it with 4 wheel. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what is the way to print all this? So I just demonstrate one thing. Array name, index, let's say I say index 2. What should be printed? This 3 should be printed here. Okay, let's have a look. Yep, 3 is printed. Why? Because 3 exists at index 2, and I've said index 2. So you can get an idea. What if there is a way that I will print all of these values while just with one line of code? Yes, it is possible. Because if you have 100 values here, let's say I say 8, 9, 10, 11, 19, and 333, 666, 999, 1000, and whatever it is. And if you do not write the size, it will just automatically know by the initialization what is the size of the array. So what do you have to do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and multiple line of cout code. So it will be very difficult task. Now let's have a look. What we can say is that for loop integer I is equals to 0. Start from index 0. I should be less than or equals to. Now let's find out the size of the array. Do you know the size of array? No, I do not know the size of array. Yes, the compiler knows, but I do not know. I want to find the size of array. So let me show you another concept that is called the size of. We can use size of function within C++ to find the size of array or any variable. Let's have a look. So if you want to know the size of an array, you will find it very useful, this concept, in later on videos as well, where the size of an array is not mentioned and you have to find. The compiler knows the size, but you do not know. and you want to perform some kind of operations on it. If you have a character array, you will have this 0, which is the null operator. So you can just apply a while loop and say until I reaches null operator, just print the values or perform some kind of operation. But if you have an array of float or integer, you cannot put a null operator. You cannot have a null operator there. So what you can do is to use the concept of size of function within C++. So there is a built-in function that will tell you the size of any variable. So a variable can be anything. So let's say we want to print the size of array name. So what it will print? The whole size of array. Okay, so let's have a look. Again semicolon missing. It is usual. So it is showing that the size of array is 52, but there is a difference between the size and the length. We want to know the length. How much length do we have? How many elements do we have in this? Okay, so where this 52 comes from? It comes from the concept that each integer takes place of 4 bytes. So if you just see every single of them take 4 bytes, so it get together and gives you 32 or 52 and whatever it is. So what we will do here is to apply the concept that if we divide the whole size by the type of data of array we use, we can obtain the length of this array. How? Let me just demonstrate it here. Size of integer. Now let's see what we get. We get 13, and now let's count the values in array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And this is how you find the size of an array. So you can just take this whole thing from here, copy, and the concept was that we want to have this. But we have to be less than the size because the index will start from 0, so it will reach up until 12. Now next thing is increment I by 1. Now what I want to do is to print out each and every value in this loop. So I will say cout print array name with the index of I and indel. So do we have everything right? Okay, let's run the program, and there you go. 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Do not get confused. The upper value that 13 was from this. Now you will see everything. 1, 2, 3. So this is how you can print the whole data of your array, and you can also perform any kind of operations. So if you can access the elements of array, you can print it, you can add them, you can multiply them, whatever you want to perform with those arrays, you can do it. Okay, so this is it for the one-dimensional array concept. Now let's move towards the two-dimensional or multi-dimensional array concept in C++ language. So here we have a multi-dimensional array concept. A multi-dimensional array is an array that can hold elements in more than one dimension. In C++, you can create two-dimensional arrays, three-dimensional arrays, and arrays with even higher dimensions. Multi-dimensional arrays are useful when you need to represent data in a tabular form or in a more complex structure than a one-dimensional array. So what happens with multi-dimensional array? For example, if I give you the example of matrices, you have rows and columns. So you can implement matrices within C++ language. Later on we will see in practice problems. You can see that these are rows and these are columns. So it shows that the first that the first point or the index, this represent the row, and the second index represent the columns. Now let's move toward the code blocks for further implementation. Okay, so up until now we have discussed for loops, while loops, and also one-dimensional array. Now let's talk about two-dimensional array implementation. We have looked at the little bit theoretical background, but I will cover two topics within this two-dimensional array. One is nested loop and another is two-dimensional array, and another is also taking input within array. So let's say I have a situation where my matrix, I will say matrix, is of 2 by 2. Okay, 2 by 2 matrix. I have got 2 by 2 matrix and I want to take input from user within this matrix. What I will do now is I will use the concept of nested loop, because I have to access this and also this. So let's have a look. For loop, integer I is equals to 0, and then I is less than 2 and I plus plus. After that, we will use for loop again within that, and we will say integer j is equals to 0, j is less than 2, and j plus plus. And what I want to do in this loop is to take input from user and cin value, cin, and store the value at mat, what? Mat I and j. So do you got this point? Let me tell you again. First of all, let's just print the whole loop. Just print this, and I'll say paste. And when I say paste, instead of cin, I will say cout. Okay. Now let's run this program. Okay, I'm missing again something. Oh man, the semicolon within C++ is a headache, because there is no semicolon in Python. Okay, so I will say 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now let's just have a demonstration of it, that how it worked. So now let's have a look at how our program worked and how two-dimensional arrays work. So first of all, we come to this I iteration variable. So I is initialized by 0. So this means that mat within cin is equals to 0. After that, we come into this j loop. So where j is equals to 0, so that is mat is equals to 0. So this means at 0 row and 0 column, store the value. Got it? Okay. Now what happens that we do not get out of the loop. What happens here that we do not get out of the loop. Instead, it increments this j, because we have a condition j is less than 2. So j is incremented by j plus plus. So now the I value remains 0 and j value is 1. So what happens? Mat 0 and 1. Then the value is stored here. After that, when we reaches the condition that j is no longer less than 2, j is equals to 2, we get out of j loop. Then I is incremented by 1. Okay, so now I is equals to 1. Then j is again initialized by 0. J is again initialized by 0. So it is mat 1 and then 0 and access the value. Then also the I remains 1 and j is incremented by 1. So mat is 1, 1. Okay, so value. So we already saw that how does the two-dimensional array look. So this is 0, 0 and this is 0, 1. This is 1, 0. This is 1, 1. So basically we entered 1, 2, 3 and 4. So we go like this by rows. Okay, so this was the concept behind it, how you can access 2D arrays and how you can perform multiple operations, and you can use the same concept for the multi-dimensional or 3-dimensional arrays as well. So I hope this would have helped you to understand the working of 2-dimensional arrays. Thanks. So I hope this demonstration would have helped you in understanding the working of these arrays, and furthermore we will perform some practice problems and project 2 of day 2, so in order to explain these concepts more in detail. So stay tuned for them as well. Now I will show you what are the practice problems for today. So these are practice problems for today. I will attempt them in my next video and I will also share it with you. And this is the day 2 project. So we will create and practice these problems in our further parts of day 2. So I hope you liked this video and you have got the idea, general idea and basic idea of the concept of loops and arrays. So stay tuned for the other videos. Thanks.